financing options. And options to increase fiscal space, we insist, exist in all countries, even in low-income countries. And there's some examples here in the figure. By raising and increasing taxation, by having a larger and more inclusive social security, contributory system, something that you are all grappling with, and also by having greater global solidarity. Greater prominence can also be given in this context of growing inequalities to wealth and income taxes, which in many countries with the levels of inequality that we have can be an important source of revenue for social security. These financing options need to be grounded in the principle of solidarity that encompass both vertical redistribution between, for example, from high income to lower income households through progressive personal income taxes or contribution rates that are higher for higher income earners, as well as horizontal redistribution, for example, between healthy and less healthy or sick persons, between men and women, between younger and older persons, or between families with and families without children. The bottom line also is that we need both redistribution and pre-distribution to achieve fairer outcomes. We need progressive taxes and robust contributory social security systems, but we also need alternative economic approaches to invest in decent employment and ensure that a higher share of the income is going to labor and not always a reduced share of income going to labor as opposed to profits, which over the past 40 years, the share of profit has been increasing at the expense of labor. This functional distribution of income needs to change. So we need alternative economic approaches that can invest in decent employment and ensure this higher income share going to labor, because that also will make it possible for these contributory systems to then have more resources. And we need to ensure that there is sufficient investment in the real economy to create jobs, decent jobs, and not just money going into a financialized system that only puts economic sustainability at risk. So let me end, and I will only take 2 minutes, Marcelo, you've been very patient. Let me end with an initiative of the UN Secretary Generals that the ILO is leading on. Let me make a reference to this global accelerator on jobs and social protection for just transitions, which is being coordinated by the ILO, but it's a UN-wide effort, and the ambition is to also bring in the international financial institution. Now, the accelerator really aims to ensure the necessary policy support and financing to create decent employment opportunities, particularly in the green and the care sectors, where we think there are huge opportunities for employment creation, and to extend social protection to the more than 4 billion people who currently have absolutely no form of social protection benefit to speak of at the moment. The initiative brings together the whole of the multilateral system to really try and create a global environment that will take us from reacting to one crisis after another in a zombie-like fashion to really proactively anticipating and equitably building and financing and managing the different transitions that are pending. Environmental transitions, the social transitions, and the economic transformations. So let me end here. Thank you.
Thank you very much for such a warm welcome. Thank you to Issa for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here. I'm a big fan of these events. I've been lucky enough to have been at several of them and to be in beautiful Morocco today is just a very special occasion for me as well. I will pick up a little bit on what Shara has just been presenting and moving further into some details of the challenges that are faced particularly by OECD countries in this, and we're calling this at the OECD the future-proofing of social protection systems. Now, what we've done is we've classified the tensions and structural challenges that we see for OECD countries in the area of social protection into three big blocks. So we think that one area is declining resources, and much has already been mentioned throughout the day today. Declining labor shares, which is something Shara just mentioned a minute ago. Routes for opting out of fiscal obligations. We heard it this morning from Morocco about the auto-entrepreneur status, which enables people to get out of this. And I know that our Dutch colleagues, for example, had also were very much worried about people declaring themselves self-employed in order to reduce social security contributions. And population aging, where we know we're going to have larger demands on resources and fewer resources coming into the systems as working age populations will be shrinking around the world. Then we have, but none of this is 100% certain, so you will be noticing that each of these arrows has, in fact, question marks. So we're not quite sure to what extent these things will happen. We think it might happen, but there's also ways and policies to take to avoid this. So now then we're also looking at growing need for support. We know that technology and globalization will be changing our labor markets around the world, which will mean that people moving out of certain jobs and moving into other jobs will need a lot more help, and help from social security institutions. You're the ones who are going to be helping these people cope with periods without work and income and moving into new areas, getting the necessary training, getting the necessary support. We also know that we've been seeing, but there we have to see how this is going to be evolving in the future. And again, this is not a fatality. This is not destiny. This is something countries can do something about. Less stable employment opportunities. Climate change I'll talk about in a minute. And social protection is really becoming the backstop for other policies. And I think on the one hand, that's good. It's really important for all of you. On the other hand, we have to be careful that we don't dump all of the policy responsibilities on social protection and say afterwards, well, this went wrong, but we have social protection who's going to pick up all of this, and this is probably not going to work. And finally, you see in the yellow arrow, we also are observing in OECD countries that many social security systems are becoming less accessible or less effective. And why is this? Well, there's gaps for non-standard workers, and I'll show you a little bit more data on that in a minute. And something that you all know very well, much better than we at the OECD, volatile earnings make it very difficult for you to collect contributions, to target benefits, to make sure that you can construct the insured people's contributions and that you can give them what they need at the time when they need it. So those are the three big things that we see as the global mega trends and tensions. Now, honestly, this is not terribly new, right? We've known this for years. We know population aging. Most of my career, I've been working on pensions. So we've been talking about 2030, 2035. We know it's going to be really bad. We're going to have labor shortages. Everything's going to be terrible. And we have to prepare. So guess what? We have no time. That's finished. The future is here today. And the combination of the COVID-19 crisis, as we said, and now the war in Ukraine have brought fast forward these challenges where we simply have to do something, and we have to do it now. So we've just picked out two of these big effects here. One is labor shortages. Again, we knew shrinking working age populations, labor shortages will come, but now we suddenly see that countries are having difficulties filling jobs, that people are not coming back to the labor market, that migration flows have dropped. Now, in some countries, particularly in Central and Western Europe, I would say, there's the refugee flows have mitigated this to a certain extent, but of course this is hopefully not a long-term trend, and people will be able to return to their country if they want and when they want. But we also know that now some people, in the US, for example, calls it the Great Resignation. People are not coming back to the labor market. And why are they not coming back? What are the jobs that they want? So we already are in the situation where social partners have to react, where we cannot fill in a very important area, for example, which is long-term care. We're having huge problems filling the jobs. So this is here to already and probably here to stay in one form or another. The other point is the rising energy prices. Again, we knew climate change was coming. How long have we been discussing carbon taxes around the world? And one of the reasons why governments are very reluctant to raise carbon taxes is because of the social impact. Because people feel that very well and they're not happy about it if they have to pay double the price for their gasoline or their heating bills. And now we can see this is here. And countries are scrambling around the world to find the right response. And again, much of this will be delivered by you. What are we going to do? Increase social assistance, have price controls of gas. At what level will we have them? Should we have producer price caps? Should we have consumer price caps? All of these big questions now are there, and they're being struggled with as we speak. So we have to get out of this emergency mode, and this is, granted, very, very difficult to do, and go to something that is not just a do now and pay later attitude. We have to have a much better structured response to this. And obviously, this is much easier said than done, because while you're doing, it's difficult to take a step back and actually have a coherent and long-term plan. Now let's come quickly to the crisis response. And here I think congratulations to all of you are in order. Because what you see on this slide here are the levels of social security spending from 2007 to 2021. So the blue bars show you how on OECD average spending has been increasing. And now we look at the light blue line on top of it. That line shows you the OECD average spending as a percentage of GDP. And look what happened between 2019 and 2020. 13% increase in social security spending, which amounts to 2% of average of GDP. So this is enormous. And I think it's really congratulations to all of you, because this went through your institutions and you were the ones who delivered on this. But it also shows you how gigantic the challenges have been, and that also it's going to be difficult to sustain that type of support if you just look at the sheer numbers. The next slide shows you what I just mentioned before, and indeed several people mentioned this before during the day already, and that is the need of out-of-work support for non-standard workers. And this is something which is true for countries around the world. This is not only OECD countries. What we've done here in the crisis, in the COVID crisis, we knew, of course, what was urgently needed was unemployment support, either through short-time work schemes or through extension of existing schemes. And we looked at what was going on in OECD countries, and out of the 33 countries for which we had information, 9, and that's the block on the left-hand side, had no access for non-standard workers to unemployment benefits. The middle panel shows you where they had voluntary or partial access. And the third panel shows you where employees and non-standard workers had the same access to unemployment benefits. Those were 9 out of 33 countries only. And not surprisingly, the panel on the right, that was easy enough, because those countries that had unemployment support for non-standard workers, they could simply increase it, adapt it, and expand. If you look at the left-hand panel, that shows you that the countries that had none such thing, they had to work on all kinds of different things. They expanded their minimum income benefits, they took emergency-related measures, or they had just flat-rate emergency measures, basically distributing checks to everybody from the government. So that, of course, is not very targeted, and it's not sustainable over the long term. And so you can see here, this is really something where we have to act and where we have to ask that question about how we want to treat and how we can treat non-standard workers in the longer term. And of course, the questions of all the things that you are dealing with on a daily basis is how to account, how to construct his earnings histories, how to target, how to measure, how to ensure compliance. All of these things are going to be crucial in this area. Now for climate change, as I said before, the climate change mitigation policies really are fundamentally social policies. And again, we've been thinking about this, and I have to say, I consider myself guilty of simplifying as well, because I remember that our colleagues from the Environmental Directorate at the OECD kept coming and saying, you have to help us in social policy, you have to come up with something here. And we kept saying, well, the instruments are there. I mean, we have social assistance, we have insurance, so probably should be okay. You don't really need anything new. But I don't think that that's true, because it's the holistic view that we were missing. And if you look at the direct effects of climate change on pollution that increases, heat waves, which we've been seeing all around the world, housing quality, these are things that affect low-income people, particular people living in certain regions. Children and older people are much more affected by pollution, for example, and heat waves. And those are things where we already have social problems pre-existing before the climate change really hits. And climate change mitigation measures, I don't have to say more about that because we're all seeing it at the moment. Even though it's not a mitigation measure why energy prices are rising, it's actually worse than that. It's rising now because of the supply issues, and we haven't even put a carbon tax on it yet. So this will give us very important lessons for how we might deal with carbon taxes in the future and what kind of social policies we need this to accompany. Finally, the labor market effects, loss of what we call brown jobs. So these are jobs in mining, in energy-intensive industries, in polluting industries. Now, labor market people could say, well, you lose jobs in these areas, easy enough, we need lots of carers, people can go into long-term care. Well, this is not going to work, we all know that. We all know that people in brown industries have been making a lot of money comparatively, and telling somebody who's been a miner that he should become a carer for long-term care is not going to work for many reasons, including for income reasons. So probably we will need to think about new forms of social protection, including wage insurance, for example. We need to think about regional distribution of workers. Are the jobs going to be in those places where the former mining towns were, for example? All of those questions are going to be really important. But to end on a positive note, the green industries may become good job creators, but we have to prepare people to be able to participate in this. And let me just add one thing here. Shara mentioned gender equality. We need to prepare young women for this as well, because we know that young women are not enough in technology, not enough in STEM areas, and certainly not enough in those type of educations and trainings that prepare them for good participation in green industries. Finally, social security agencies, and this has been said before by Marcelo, but by other speakers as well. I would say you can not only play a vital role, you are the vital players here. Governments will set the regulation around it, the regulatory rules, they will do legislation, but afterwards they will come to you and say, now you do it. And I see my German colleagues sitting in the first row, and Germany has made some very substantial decisions on how to deal with pensions. And I know how difficult it is to then find the practical solutions to all of this. So it's really something that comes up to you, and you're the ones who have to do it. And to be honest, you're also the ones who are going to be blamed when it doesn't work so well. So I really chapeau. I would like to really say that it's impressive what is being expected from all of you, and it's been impressive what you've been doing. Now, some areas we're thinking about are automatic payments now, because with digitalization, and I know France, for example, wants to tackle non-recourse to benefits by automatically sending them to people's accounts. Targeting remains key, and again, you have all the information. Without the information you have, nobody can target anything. And digital infrastructure, which is going to play an important role this week here at the forum, luckily, is also key. And mention one more thing, data protection legislation, which is going to become an absolutely vital area which we all need to work in, where I think also you have another role, because you see it every day, of alerting governments to the need to regulate here and to make sure that your insured person's data are properly protected. So with that, I've come to the end. Thank you very much for your attention.
That we have to reflection on the topics that you mentioned during your book of your argument. So, and then the audience here is basically the social security institutions and the people that implement the policy of social security is focused on your answer. And one thing that I mentioned during the presentation, and I see both of you mentioned as well, is that the level of uncertainty that we are facing now is getting higher. We are getting with new risks, they are becoming stronger, they are becoming more frequent. So, Monica, you mentioned as well, climate change, energy wars, dry inflation. So, considering this level of economic uncertainty that we are facing, what do you see the role of social security institutions in this environment of economic uncertainty? That probably is something that we will see over the following triennium. Sure.
Is this on? Yes. So I think just to pick up on one of the points that Monica, you raised, which is the social security institutions cannot be, the kind of solution to all problems. I mean, what we really talk about as policy coherence, and that we cannot just have, everything that goes wrong, that social security has to step in and fix it. And I think some of the problems that we are facing now in the current climate, this uncertainty that you referred to, uncertainty to some extent because of the kind of inflationary context, but also the policies that are being put in place in order to respond to the inflation, I think are likely to make some matters worse, and I'm thinking here in particular in terms of the impact that it's going to have on labor markets, on the creation of employment, and income, which I think will make things more difficult for social security institutions in terms of having the kind of fiscal resources that are needed in order to be able to respond not only to the day-to-day needs, but also to these structural changes that are needed, of protecting people while they shift or reskill or retool to move from one region to another, from the so-called brown sectors that are being shut to having, unemployment protection and active labor market policies to prepare them to move to the emerging sectors, whatever they may be. These are things that require fiscal resources as well as the kind of administrative and delivery capacity. And I think the current context and the likelihood that the impacts it's going to have in terms of slowing down the labor market recovery, which has been very uneven in high-income countries. The labor market has recovered much more than in developing countries, and the ILO monitor has been tracking the slow recovery of the labor market, which means fewer people in employment, fewer people contributing into social security institutions, employers, workers, both of them, and also in the context of austerity, the difficulty of getting fiscal resources from the state. That also is going to become a harder struggle. So I see things getting much more difficult, particularly fiscally in the coming years. And I think something that we need to also watch out for is the temptation of not, which happened during COVID, of not allowing sort of individual withdrawals from the social security system in order to address some of the urgent needs that countries have, because that we know also puts the systems from an actuarial perspective also at risk. So we really need to address, if we don't have sufficient unemployment protection, this is something that needs to be slowly built, and not using other forms of social protection that we have, be it pensions or other areas where there is some financing, making sure that countries are not allowing the individual withdrawal of those resources, because that would put the system at risk. And I think really it comes to governments to try and have the kind of policy coherence which is needed to be able to enable the economy to pick up and the labor market to recover. And this is not something that the social security institutions on their own can do. So we need much greater, I think, policy coherence there.
Okay. Monica, you have your thoughts on it?
Does this work? Yeah. I think one of the unexploited treasures, perhaps, is all the data that social security institutions have, and that could be fed in much earlier into scenario building and perspective, to not start only from the high level, but to feed the information up from the bottom and build scenarios and kind of say, this is what happened last time. These are the people who, according to our data, are the most vulnerable. Because what often happens, and we see this at the OECD, we have quite crude indicators on household poverty. It's notoriously late. Because to have income distribution information, you have to have the surveys, and it takes a long time to feed through. Whereas you collect, you have to do this every month, or sometimes every week, every day. And so I think there's much more information out there, which in a situation of uncertainty and need to act very fast, should be fed in earlier into the process. And it depends on the country, obviously. In some countries, social security and ministries are extremely well linked and do exchange that information, have a constant dialogue. In other countries, that's not the case, where the ministry and the policy people and the parliament are on one side and the social security institutions are on the other side. So I think we really need a much more joining of forces and making sure that all of this is there early.
Okay. Well, Monica, as you're talking about joining forces, now so you're talking about cooperation, coordination, and then it comes to a topic that's quite dear to our membership, that's the institutional capacity. So, and you are talking about challenges that we are facing now, solutions that you are proposing. So how do you see how is the institutional capacity of our membership? How is it relevant, and what can be done in order to face the challenges that you are talking about, and what in order to go to the solutions that you are proposing? So, okay, if you want, Shara, to start, okay.
I mean, I think, you're doing a great job as ISA in terms of providing the guidelines, and institutions are doing a great job in terms of, the way in which during COVID, the digital technology was really used to bring benefits to people, to really make, face-to-face interactions, unnecessary for having benefits paid. And so there's a lot that has been done, and I think, you showed the data for OECD, but we also know that during COVID, the number of measures that were put in place, social security measures, in both contributory and non-contributory systems in the non-OECD countries was also quite significant. Of course, the problem was that many of them were short-term measures. But I think thinking much more long-term and in terms of building, I would say building trust and confidence in the system is absolutely key, particularly if institutions are going to be able to address and to bring in those who are in the informal economy, some of whom have contributory capacity, but may not have confidence in the system and may not trust the system, not know that if they put their money in today, they will be able to claim a benefit, when they have an accident or when they are old. I mean, old age pensions, you need a lot of confidence to have that kind of trust and put in resources into the system to be able to reap the benefits, 30 years, 40 years down the line. So I think that building of trust and confidence is really important, and I would say having greater participation of social partners, of workers and employers organizations in the governance of the institutions can help that confidence building, as well as having representation from other affected groups, whether it's people with disabilities or pensioners. I think that kind of really wide, wide participation and confidence building to show there is transparency, to show the systems are rights-based, and to show that there are mechanisms for redress, so that when benefits are not paid, people know they can have recourse to some mechanism for complaint and redress. I think these are very important measures.
Okay, Monica.
I think what's needed is something that ISA has been putting forward not only since today, but in the past already, and which we completely adhere to at the OECD, and that's people-centeredness. And one area that we've been working a lot on at the OECD is the integration of social services in the widest sense, which includes also unemployment insurance, pension insurance, health insurance, and so on, to have one-stop shops, to have one-stop portals, to make sure that clients don't have to go to 10 times over again. I'll give you a very dramatic example, which we're currently working on. We're about to put out a report on violence against women, where if you don't have a one-stop shop, you're forcing women who have lived very traumatic experiences to go from one place to the next to apply for housing support, for employment support, for health support, for childcare support, for legal support, and psychological support. So you need to really build packages for people that are easily accessible, and in these times of the danger of social security becoming less inclusive and less effective, it's even more important, because many countries still condition, for example, employment support and training and so on the receipt of an unemployment benefit. So if you don't get a cash benefit, you're not going to have right to all of these other services that you actually need when you're unemployed and need to try and get back to work. So that does require a specific institutional capacity, because our institutions in general have not been used to work like that. But you go to one institution to get something and somebody else, and then people don't have the time to interact. So it actually requires not only a rethink, but an institutional rebuilding. And that, of course, in times of fiscal austerity is going to be very hard. But I think it's important to keep making the case that integrated service delivery is something we really need for the future, because otherwise we're going to lose people on the way, and they will fall into these cracks.
Okay, perfect. Well, we have just some few minutes to the coffee break. And one of the priority topics of this last triennial was social inclusive growth. So what do you see the role of social security institutions for inclusive growth, social cohesion? So very briefly. So Shara, maybe?
Yeah, maybe to say that having social exclusion and having the kind of inequalities that are growing is something that we know systemically feeds into the crisis. Into financial crises, as we saw in 2008, the fact that health systems were not up to scratch probably made the pandemic worse. The fact that countries entered the pandemic after a decade of austerity was not the best of conditions to be having a pandemic, and it took a long time for systems to be built. So I think the lesson is that, and social security institutions and universal social protection is a very clear mechanism for creating the kind of inclusion that I think can help societies feel like they are one unit, that there's solidarity, but also we know that that also serves a more sustainable economy, a more equal and more sustainable economy.
Okay, Monica?
I don't think I can add anything to what Chara just said, because that's, I would say the same. It's the role cannot be overestimated because of the client's proximity. Where you really do know what the situation of your clients is, and for inclusion that really matters, because also people who are at risk of social exclusion, they don't have time. They don't have time for the system to work its way down and through the different legal entitlements and so on. They need help immediately, and they need it right now. But I think we all agree that sending out blanket checks to everybody is not a sustainable thing to do. And another area which I think we've also learning from the crisis is the massive support to companies was good and was necessary, because it ended up being short-time work subsidization. But now we're seeing in some of our member countries that the bankruptcy rates of smaller companies are rising by 70%. We knew that this was going to happen. We knew that there were some zombie firms that were being supported throughout the crisis, but it also shows you that without any conditionalities, just dishing out support is not something that is sustainable for the future. And I think also in terms of social policy and social cohesion, it might actually do more harm in the long term, because people are going to it'll still hit them. It'll just hit them with a time lag. And the frustration could be all the bigger because they thought it was over and knew they were saved, and then it turns out they're not. So I think that's another really important point.
Okay, so thank you, both of you. Thank you very much. We are here with the two major experts of Social Security in the world. I'm not saying this just because I'm by your side. They really are two of the major Social Security experts in the world. And what we are listening now is how we are relevant, how we as Social Security institutions, we are relevant. And my questions were on purpose to this, to see how we are relevant in order to face economic uncertainty, in order to build social inclusive societies, and most of all, how important is our capacity to implement policy, how important is our institutional framework in order to make societies more resilient to shocks, and in order to make our societies more inclusive, more equal. So I end this first part now. I will call for a coffee break, and then afterwards we will come back with CEOs from all over the world changing their experience on this global challenge, trends and solutions to social security. So see you in half an hour, so we start sharply at 4:15. Thank you. See you soon.
أشرف اي ضل شو دينا كاميرا اسمع عبد الله
Okay. Good afternoon again. We are coming back to our session today, this afternoon. So we started with the specialists, top technical specialists of Social Security for international organizations, and now we are going to the top managers of our members of our Social Security institutions, with a very good regional representation. We have members from Europe, Africa, America, Asia, all continents that we can imagine. So, composing this panel today that I will moderate with me, I have the pleasure to have with us Milka Mugunda. Milka, she's Vice President of our association. Milka, she is also the Executive Officer of the Social Security Commission in Namibia. Also with us from Germany, over there. So, okay. Milka. So also with us from Germany, Gundula Hosbar. Gundula, she is president of the German Federal Pension Insurance in Germany. So Gundula, thank you for being with us. Also from Asia, Rajendra Kumar. Rajendra, he is Director General of the Employees State Insurance Corporation in India. So Rajendra, thank you very much for being with us. Our old friend, not in age, but in time of friendship, Ali Mukt, who is President Director of BJPS Kesehatan, Indonesia. So thank you very much for being with us today, also from Asia. Is president of the Social Insurance Bank in Uruguay. So thank you, Cabrera, for being with us today. So I will start with a question to all panelists. Unfortunately, I have to control the time, so each one of you will have 5 minutes to talk. And since the last global gathering of ESA at the World Social Security Forum 2019 in Brussels, the world has undergone exceptionally turbulent times. Social security, and especially social security institutions, have been at the center of national responses to health, social, and economic impact of the COVID-19 response. It was a time full of change, but also, as I mentioned before, full of innovation. In this first round of discussion, I would like to invite you to reflect on these past 3 years and how Social Security in your country, as well as your institutions, how Social Security have changed or progressed. So my question is, what have been the most important changes and transformations that have occurred during the past 3 years as regards the social security system you are implementing and the way your institution delivers on its mandate? So, Gula, please. Yuka.
Thank you so much. I'm from Namibia. For the past 3 years, we have been challenged quite a great deal. The first time that we felt the impact of COVID is in 2020, when our president announced a complete lockdown for the country. And at that point in time, we actually didn't know how to respond to this entire lockdown, because for us at that point in time, we thought COVID is just something that is there in China and in Europe, and not really in Africa. However, we were immediately put on alert. The first thing we did as Social Security Commission at that point in time was we immediately responded to the clarion call of the president of the country. Immediately, we made use of all our reserves, which we had. The first thing we did is we formed a very strong relationship with the local authorities, with the Ministry of Health, with all the local authorities in the whole country. And then we determined what are the needs, especially in the informal sector where there was no running water, where there was no sanitation. And immediately we put together a team which was put on alert. We put in a lot of money, set up infrastructure for sanitation, set up infrastructure for running water, have relationship with the Ministry of Health. And at that point in time, Namibia was facing a very serious situation of a shortage of oxygen, shortage of beds, shortage of facilities to address the COVID. And as social security, we immediately chopped in. We provided the Ministry of Health with some funding, also to get some equipment, some oxygen, and so. But in the meantime, what we also did is, between the ministry, between the government and social security, we formed a coalition. And the government also then gave us some money, which money then we could use towards a stimulus plan. A stimulus plan was mostly for those sectors which were highly affected, like the hospitality industry, the restaurants, and so. And immediately we provided extra income for those people who lost jobs within those sectors. But in addition to that, as social security, we gave the employers at least a 3 months grace period so that they don't have to contribute for that period, and then they could find out how best they could then solve their issue. And also from the government side, the government also provided some funding for some of the people who were unemployed. Our response was also with the informal sector. We also entered the informal sector. So yeah, we did quite a lot within a very short period. But in addition to that, what became very clear was that we also had to attend to our own staff and to our own setup. And immediately we realized that quite a number of people within the office were positive, COVID positive. It helped us now, or it actually it was a rude awakening for us to change a complete way of doing things. We had to send people home, and it became a virtual kind of a meeting, virtual kind of offices, which was not easy initially because Namibia was not prepared in terms of technology. However, I must say that within a very short period of time, we overcame, and then we could at least do what we were supposed to do. Now, what also happened during that same period is that the government increased their basic income grant. The government also provided food for children at schools, and also a lot of, especially for children at school, soup kitchens, and so all those things were done. So it was a collective decision and a collective effort from the government, the private sector, the social security. And the interesting thing was, what became very clear is that we never anticipated how we would cooperate. But it was such an interesting thing that with the onset of COVID, it was like a collective decision. Everybody did what was supposed to do, but then everybody was there to support each other. So from that perspective, I think Namibia was a very good example and a very good lesson as far as the COVID and how we dealt with the COVID situation.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the exact timing of your answer. So, from a German perspective, so Gundula, please.
Ja, vielen Dank. Auch ein herzliches Willkommen von mir. Was hat die Pandemie uns gelehrt? Die Lockdowns in Deutschland waren ein Stresstest für die gesamte soziale Sicherung. Wir sind finanziert im Umlagesystem, sprich, wenn der Arbeitsmarkt nicht funktioniert, dann fehlen auch die Beiträge in der Rentenversicherung. Wir haben dann ein Instrument genutzt in Deutschland, das nennt sich Kurzarbeitergeld. Das heißt, es gibt eine befristete Unterstützung durch die Arbeitslosenversicherung, ohne dass der Job verloren geht. Und dann zahlt die Arbeitslosenversicherung Beiträge an die Rentenversicherung, sodass wir in der Rentenversicherung eine ganz stabile Einnahmesituation hatten, während die Arbeitslosenversicherung in Deutschland dann ins Defizit ging. Aber damit können wir die das Risiko des langen Lebens und die langen Kontenzeiten in der Rentenversicherung gut abfedern, sodass wir keine großen Lücken haben bei den Rentenanwartschaften. Wir haben aber auch gemerkt, wer durch das System fällt, und das sind in Deutschland die Selbstständigen. Die Selbstständigen sind nicht rentenversicherungspflichtig, die sind auch nicht in der Arbeitslosenversicherung. Und da hat man gemerkt, diese Menschen sind in Deutschland durch das Raster gefallen. Und da gibt es auch eine Menge an Diskussionen. Daneben war unser Krankenversicherungssystem unter Stress, sowohl was die Versorgung anbelangt, der akuten Covid-Patienten, aber auch ein großes Thema in Deutschland ist die Long-Covid-Versorgung. Und wir haben hier eigene Rehabilitationsleistungen etabliert und die werden auch beforscht, weil wir haben schon ca. 10.000 Patienten rehabilitiert mit Long- und Post-Covid-Syndrom. Wir haben auch hier einen Kurzfilm hier auf dem Weltforum. In unserer Verwaltung gab es einen Digitalisierungsschub. Wir haben wirklich sehr schnell die elektronische Akte und einen neuen Workflow eingeführt und haben da auf kleine, die Nano-PCs gesetzt. Und wir haben heute fast 60% unserer Mitarbeitenden im Remote Work. Wir haben uns in der Pandemie wirklich in kurzer Zeit da eine Möglichkeit erarbeitet, dass die Menschen dann aus gesundheitlichen Gründen dann auch von zu Hause arbeiten konnten. Wir haben auch unsere gesamte Beratung für unsere Versicherten und Rentner umgestellt. Wir haben Antragsberatung über Telefon- und Videoberatung eingeführt und wir haben ganz spezielle Menschen, die bei uns beraten in Deutschland. Die waren die einzigen, die dann noch Kundenkontakt hatten, persönlich mit den Versicherten, wo es dann nicht über Telefon oder Video funktioniert hat. Und das Ganze hat auch nochmal in Deutschland dazu geführt, über degressive Rentenformeln nachzudenken, weil wir haben gemerkt, die Geringverdiener in Deutschland haben ein Absicherungsthema. Und hier ist man gerade dabei, ähnlich wie in den USA oder auch in der Schweiz, über degressive Rentenformeln nachzudenken, sodass das Äquivalenzprinzip, was wir in Deutschland haben, also jeder Beitrag bringt auch mehr Leistung, etwas relativiert wird. So viel im Moment von mir zu dem, was wir gelernt haben, und zu den Aussichten, denke ich, kommen wir noch. Vielen Dank.
Okay, so thank you very much, Gundula. So let us now go to an Indian perspective. So Hajendra, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Last 3 years have been challenging for all of us. Before I tell about how ESI, the agency that I had, responded to the challenges, let me just briefly take a few seconds to tell about what ESI does. We cover workers below a certain wage limit in organized sector with the healthcare facilities, sickness benefits, unemployment, etc. Total number of workers that we covered is about 35 million, and along with the family members is about 135 million. So we cover about 10% of India's population in terms of providing the social security schemes. When COVID started in 2020, we had to face a number of challenges which ESI was able to meet very effectively. In terms of our schemes, we provided our hospitals, which our agency owns, for converting them into COVID-19 dedicated facilities for the government to really be able to meet the immediate response for the COVID-19 pandemic. We also relaxed the unemployment scheme to provide benefits to those who were rendered jobless as a result of the pandemic. And as a result of this scheme, over 1 billion rupees were provided as benefits, unemployment benefits to the people who were affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. We also undertook a massive digitalization, and we provided healthcare facilities to our insured persons through teleconsultation. This was a new initiative during this period, which was very effective. We also provided as a special relief package for COVID-19 affected insured persons, relief in the form of pension to those who had passed away as a result of COVID-19. So for the first time, this was not a scheme earlier, for the first time as a result of the pandemic, the people who lost their lives, their family members were provided pension, lifelong pension, to the extent of 90% of the average wages drawn by the insured person. So as a result of these measures, we have been really able to address the immediate challenges in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. Within the organization, that's another dimension that I would like to mention. Within the organization also, we undertook the changes required to address challenges. For example, the workers in ESIC, they were allowed to work remotely. We had to undertake a massive digitization of our office activities, including introducing e-file so that all the official work could be conducted remotely. People could log in from anywhere, any place, and they could get approvals and the work could go on. Our hospitals, we have a big network of about 160 hospitals across the country, a big network of about 1,500 dispensaries, and about 8 medical colleges. So all these were really geared up to meet the challenges of COVID-19 pandemic as a result of the adverse impacts that we all were having. So in terms of providing benefits to the insured persons, ours is a contributing scheme in which the workers, they contribute through their employers a certain percentage of their monthly wages. The insured persons' interests were taken care of adequately by my organization, and it's a continuing process. Even now, we continue to improvise, we continue to introduce innovations, we continue to think with the insured persons to be the most important part of our ecosystem, and around whom we need to design all our systems and all our response mechanisms so that all the benefits that we can give to the insured persons that can be provided. So this is, as I mentioned, a learning experience for the last 3 years, and I'm happy to state here that in future we are all geared up and we are ready to meet the challenges and the new situations that may arise. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Rajendra. Now continuing Asia. So Dr. Mukti, your experience in Indonesia, please.
Muchas gracias, señor secretario general. Como es lógico, en Uruguay la pandemia tuvo una incidencia particularmente en las prestaciones de actividad, no así en las prestaciones de pasividad, que se mantuvieron con regularidad, y dentro de las prestaciones de actividad tuvo incidencia en el seguro de desempleo y en el subsidio por enfermedad, las dos líneas clásicas de prestaciones de actividad de corto plazo. En el caso del seguro de desempleo, Uruguay cuenta o contaba al momento de la pandemia con un seguro de desempleo tradicional en casos de despido o reducción o suspensión parcial del trabajo. Entre febrero del 2020 y abril del 2020, el subsidio de desempleo creció un 400%, y para eso el país instrumentó algunos cambios jurídicos, particularmente uno que fue muy eficaz, que fue la creación de un seguro de paro por suspensión parcial. Esto es, a la dicotomía habitual entre estar en seguro de desempleo o estar trabajando, se agregó una tercera categoría que fue complementar el trabajo con un seguro de desempleo que tenía como un mínimo de 6 días o una reducción del 50% del horario de trabajo. Esto fue así porque Uruguay nunca cerró su economía completamente y las empresas, con excepción de algunas áreas específicas por motivos sanitarios, siguieron funcionando, pero naturalmente con una gran reducción en su giro de actividad. Entonces la forma que se encontró para ayudar a ambas partes, no generar una ola de despidos y permitir que el vínculo laboral se mantuviera, fue este seguro de paro por suspensión parcial que funcionó muy bien y que permitió que las empresas con menor demanda de sus servicios, sobre todo comercio y servicios, que fue donde más se aplicó, pudieran mantener el vínculo laboral y mantener las empresas funcionando y los empleados manteniendo su trabajo, aunque reducido en su actividad. Diría que esa es la gran innovación que se ha ido prorrogando en el tiempo y que todavía hoy algunos sectores más perjudicados por la pandemia todavía han tenido prórrogas a este beneficio. De la mano de eso, por supuesto, además se flexibilizaron las condiciones de ingreso al seguro de desempleo. Por ejemplo, el multiempleo no fue un impedimento para que una persona que perdía uno de los trabajos pudiera acceder al beneficio del seguro de desempleo en otro. Esto es un caso que fue muy puntual, por ejemplo, en el servicio doméstico, donde es muy común que la trabajadora doméstica o el trabajador doméstico tenga más de un patrón y en muchos casos al comienzo algunos le dejaban de dar trabajo, pero otros no, y si no se hacía esa modificación no lograba tener la cobertura del seguro de desempleo. Lo tercero fue flexibilizar el resto de las condiciones de ingreso. Aquellos trabajadores que al momento de la pandemia tenían vencidos ya los requisitos o ya habían gozado del seguro de desempleo, en muchos de los sectores más perjudicados también se permitió flexibilizar los requisitos de ingreso, permitiendo que también pudieran gozar del beneficio. Y en los sectores más perjudicados, estos beneficios se fueron prorrogando cada 6 meses, viendo cómo evolucionaba la economía. Creo que en aras del tiempo esto es en términos de seguro de desempleo. En términos de seguro de enfermedad, Uruguay, cabe aclarar que no tuvo una primera ola. Uruguay mantuvo controlado todo su nivel de contagios durante todo el 2020 y casi todo el 2021, y cuando apareció la variante Omicron, lo que en el mundo fue una segunda ola, en Uruguay se podría decir que fue la primera. Y ahí el sistema recibió una gran demanda de subsidios por enfermedad, muchos y simultáneos, lo cual generó entre los prestadores de salud y el Banco de Previsión Social, que es quien paga y liquida el subsidio, un cuello de botella para poder no tener tiempos muertos entre el acto médico de la certificación para acreditar que ese trabajador estaba enfermo y el otorgamiento del subsidio. Y para evitar ese problema se hizo una segunda modificación, que fue un sistema centralizado online por el cual se ingresaba los test de COVID positivos, y a partir del ingreso unificado se le informaba a nuestra institución y se disparaba el subsidio directamente sin necesidad de contar con un acto médico. Con lo cual el tiempo muerto entre que el trabajador se enfermaba, pedía un médico, llegaba al médico y acreditaba la enfermedad, se evitó. Y lo segundo que es importante en términos de seguro de enfermedad fue que se determinó que la población de riesgo, entendiendo por tal, o enfermos crónicos que tuvieran condiciones médicas para ser población de riesgo, o mayores de 65 años, tenían subsidio por enfermedad sin ninguna otra condición objetiva que la edad. O sea, un trabajador mayor a 65 años, mientras duró la emergencia sanitaria, no iba a trabajar y cobraba el subsidio por desempleo. En grandes rasgos, estas fueron las dos áreas donde Uruguay realizó reformas a partir de la pandemia. En los 10 segundos me quedan, digo también que naturalmente realizamos reformas de gestión, telemedicina, tratar de dar servicios que hasta ese momento eran presenciales de manera remota, lo cual no deja de ser un problema de organizaciones como las nuestras, que no son todos nuestros clientes nativos digitales y no siempre se puede dar todo.
Perfecto. Cabrera, muchas gracias. Okay. Now I will give the word to Ali Mukt from Indonesia. So Mukt, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marcelo. First of all, I would like to thank, and then second, I would like to say that in Indonesia there are 2 types of social security. First, social security implementing agency for worker compensation, covering like job loss compensation, accident-related job and related work, old age, retirement, and so on and so forth, and social security and health. And now I'm responsible for Social Security Implementing Agency in Health. And we are covering 240 million people with single integrated scheme, only one scheme. And what we have done, first that, of course, that we are developing on the ecosystem digitalization. And we categorize this ecosystem digitalization into 4 clusters. Cluster number 1 related to members, then related to the health providers, related to the finance and banks, and then related to the stakeholders. First, the members. So we already developed what we call it, shifting from offline branches to online. Previously, more than 100 people are queuing in our branch offices. Now, only maybe less than 100. And not only that, but they can be able to track complaints, registration, status view, update data, premium payment, finding nearest health facilities, then generating digital identity card. So we work together with citizen identity number can integrate into our system. And for the healthcare, of course, we now develop digitalized credentialing process for healthcare facilities provider, optimization disease management program by using video, and then we have telemedicine, teleconsultation, and then about related to the bank, the digital ecosystem, we have developed more than 650,000 payment point and payment channel. For example, like OVO, like Enrollmart, and many type of new payment. Then, of course, for the regarding interconnected stakeholders cluster, BPJS Kesehatan cooperate with various ministries, organizations, private corporation, association, communities in order to optimize the data updating and expand web-based membership. And we were lucky because our president already issued how 30 ministries and organizations have to work together, and this relate to the public services. So if they are not the member of our schemes, there may be, give penalty or something like that. Then the number 2, what we have done, which is really in the first history of BPJS Kesehatan, is that we now already positive asset, usually always deficit and negative, although people now like negative. Okay, then of course we have too many things new, especially related to the COVID. So we have system where can track, tested, and also recorded, monitored, and working together with Ministry of Health and also with other ministries, and for immunization, and also for identify those who have high risk and also comorbidities, where they are prioritized to immunize of COVID-19. I think because of the time, of course, then I have to stop here. Also still have 10 seconds. Okay, now I think that is all. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for being strict to the time. So, Otman, from the Moroccan perspective, please.
Alors, le Maroc, évidemment, à l'instar de tous les pays, a été fortement impacté par la crise du Covid, dans la mesure où nous avons connu un confinement strict de près de 3 mois. Et évidemment, il a fallu prendre des mesures pour venir en aide essentiellement, je dirais, au secteur privé, puisque les fonctionnaires ont continué à être payés. Mais pour le secteur privé, effectivement, il fallait prendre des mesures pour sauvegarder les emplois et permettre à un certain nombre de personnes de continuer à avoir disons la subsistance, les moyens de subsister. Et puis venir en aide d'une certaine manière aux entreprises. Donc les mesures d'urgence qui ont été prises concernent aussi bien les employeurs que les salariés. Pour les employeurs qui sont inscrits à la sécurité la sécurité nationale, la caisse de sécurité nationale, il y a eu la suspension des cotisations pendant près de 4 mois. Et puis également, les pénalités de retard ont été abandonnées pour cette période-là. Concernant les salariés des entreprises évidemment qui sont inscrites à la CNSS, une indemnité forfaitaire de 2000 dirhams, c'est à peu près, je dirais 200 €, a été donnée à l'ensemble de ces salariés, ce qui a coûté à l'État une somme qui tourne aux alentours de 600 millions d'euros pour, je dirais, une population de plus d'1 million d'assurés. Alors, d'autres mesures ont concerné ce qu'on appelle les ramédistes. Les ramédistes, c'est les gens qui sont inscrits au registre d'assistance médicale. C'est des personnes qui sont ou pauvres ou dans un état de vulnérabilité assez important. Et là aussi, à travers un fonds qui a été constitué spécialement à cet effet, l'État a indemnisé selon, disons, le nombre de personnes qui constituent chaque foyer, une indemnité forfaitaire qui leur a permis en tout cas de dépasser cette période-là. Alors, nous, en tant que... Alors moi, parce que je suis à la tête de l'autorité de contrôle des assurances et de la prévoyance sociale. Déjà, c'est une spécificité au Maroc, puisque nous sommes l'autorité de régulation et du secteur des assurances et de celui de la prévoyance sociale. Et à ce titre, en ce qui concerne le secteur des assurances, nous avons procédé à l'assouplissement des règles de provisionnement de manière temporaire, pour leur permettre évidemment de dépasser cette période, parce que sinon ça pouvait impacter de manière très forte le provisionnement et les placements de ces entreprises. Par rapport au secteur de la prévoyance sociale, nous avons également aidé, disons, une société mutuelle de retraite. C'est le seul régime privé au Maroc. C'est une caisse de retraite complémentaire. On lui a permis d'assouplir un certain nombre de règles en ce qui concerne les pénalités de retard et également par rapport aux points, les points calculés pour les retraites. Là aussi, on leur a permis de changer le mécanisme pour que ça n'affecte pas de manière très défavorable les pensionnaires. Voilà, alors l'autorité de contrôle donc, que je dirige a aussi travaillé, piloté disons une commission qui a permis de faire des scénarios par rapport à l'impact évidemment du Covid, comment il a impacté les organismes gestionnaires de l'assurance maladie obligatoire. On a aussi également fait des études pour voir un petit peu, parce que tous les tests étaient gratuits et les organismes, disons, de gestionnaires de l'assurance maladie obligatoire ont pris leur part pour des montants quand même qui sont assez importants. Voilà, donc essentiellement, nous avons contribué en apportant notre soutien au gouvernement, en effectuant des études actuarielles et pour faire également des projections et permettre d'avoir la meilleure visibilité possible. Alors évidemment, il me reste une vingtaine de secondes, l'autre aspect à côté des mesures d'urgence, c'est évidemment de penser l'avenir en réformant le système de santé, en accélérant la généralisation de l'assurance maladie obligatoire et pour faire face peut-être aux défis auxquels nous serons confrontés dans l'avenir. Voilà, mais là, d'abord, je n'ai plus le temps et je ne m'étalerai pas puisque le panel de ce matin, le panel ministériel, a développé largement les projets futurs du Maroc. Merci.
Parfait, merci beaucoup. So I'm now going to the second question. So while we can now say that we have hopefully overcome the COVID-19 pandemic, the world is dominated by economic uncertainty, inflationary pressures, climate change, and profound demographic, technological, and labor market transformations that continue to put extraordinary pressures on social security systems, institutions, and populations, as I mentioned in the previous session. Social security as a key investment in inclusive and resilient societies seems to be needed more than ever to support people during difficult and uncertain times. Many countries are trying to move forward in strengthening social security protection. For social security to play this essential role, however, social security institutions need to continue showing their leadership towards adapting, sustaining, and extending social security. So, in this second round of discussion, I would like to invite you to look ahead to what is necessary, in your view, to tackle the key current and future challenges. So, my question is, what are the trends that, in your view, will be critically impacting the capacity of social security systems and your institutions to deliver on its objectives and mandates? And what are, from your point of view, key adaptations or reforms necessary to respond to them? So, Milka, please.
Thank you so much. The biggest lesson we learned during the pandemic or the COVID pandemic was that our systems were not geared towards the challenges that we that we encountered. And that created an opportunity for us to go back to the drawing board and then to review our systems. Now, when I talk about our systems, we're also looking at policies. Between the Social Security and the government, we came up with a social protection policy, which then covers all the aspects of social protection and social security. However, in addition to that, we also realized that there should be a paradigm shift in terms of the approach we have and also in terms of our operations and also in terms of our service delivery. And that has given us an opportunity to sit back again and to see how we can then listen and how we can then look at the new way, which is now the normal way. But in addition to that, we have also realized that we have been doing a lot of member education, but it became very clear that we needed to emphasize more and then invest a lot in member education and also in introduction of new products. For instance, we have been struggling to introduce a national pension fund so that everybody who is within the borders of Namibia will belong to a pension fund, because in Namibia we have got a pension fund which is for the civil servants, which is compulsory, but if you're in the private sector, it is not compulsory. From a social security perspective, we are now trying to introduce a national pension fund, and ILO has been very instrumental in assisting us with that. In addition to that, we are also looking at introducing the unemployment insurance fund, which is something that is very important. We have already started with that. It's also something that we have been struggling, but with the COVID, it became very clear that it's something that we need to seriously concentrate on. What we have also realized is that we have been neglecting our informal sector. The informal sector in Namibia is actually quite different in the sense of it is not really an informal sector, but it is an informal sector. And because of that, it creates a lot of problems. And as the previous speaker was saying, if you don't have a regular income, it makes it very difficult to monitor. And the informal sector has got that disadvantage that they don't have a regular income. And that affects then how you are going to service them, what kind of services you are going to give them. Now, having said that, there are quite a lot of things which I cannot just cover in the 5 minutes I have given that Social Security has embarked on. We are looking at the government is also changing the Pension Fund Act, which is the one which is running the entire country. There are some reforms which are happening, and all these reforms are going towards or gearing towards improving the social life of everybody in Namibia. But Namibia, being such a vast country with such a small population, has given us the opportunity to make sure that we can then at least address some of the issues seamlessly.
Okay, thank you very much. Milka, now I'm passing the word to Gundula. Gundula, please.
Ja, vielen Dank. Ich möchte auf zwei Aspekte eingehen. Zum einen den Aspekt, was hat das für unser System der sozialen Sicherheit, was habe ich da für Trends im Kopf, und dann aber auch für die Verwaltung, also unsere Administration. Wenn ich auf Europa schaue, so ist, denke ich, die große Herausforderung eine angemessene Alterssicherung im Zuge des demografischen Wandels. Wenn wir auf die Statistik schauen, so hat Europa von den 10 ältesten Nationen in der Welt sind 9 aus Europa und Deutschland hat Platz 6. Wir haben heute schon 25% unserer Bevölkerung Menschen, die Rente beziehen. Also das ist eine ganze Menge, und wir erleben den Druck der Demografie auf die parallelen Systeme der sozialen Sicherheit, nämlich Rentenversicherung, Krankenversicherung und Pflegeversicherung in Deutschland. Und wir haben den großen Schwung der Demografie unmittelbar vor uns. Die sogenannten Babyboomer sind am Start, und wir erwarten eine Steigerung um weitere 30% in den nächsten Jahren, die in Rente gehen werden. Wir haben auch in der Vergangenheit Demografie erlebt, also den demografischen Wandel, der beginnt nicht erst jetzt. Wir konnten in diesen Zeiten den Beitragssatz in der Rentenversicherung stabil halten, weil es uns gelungen ist, die Erwerbsbeteiligung in Deutschland deutlich zu stärken. Wir haben einen, und das ist der Mix, der in Deutschland auch gegangen ist, wir haben eine höhere Erwerbsquote älterer, sprich bis unter 65 Lebensjahren. Das ist der größte Anstieg dieser Personengruppe in den letzten Jahren in der OECD-Welt. Wir haben die Erwerbsbeteiligung von Frauen um fast 25% erhöht. Und wir hatten in den vergangenen Jahren eine hohe Integration von Zuwanderern, nicht nur auch von Migranten, sondern eben auch innerhalb der EU, weil wir ja in der EU die große Freizügigkeit haben und unser Arbeitsmarkt in Deutschland sehr aufnahmefähig ist. Wir haben in die Zukunft das Ziel, dass unsere Renten ähnlich steigen werden wie die Löhne, und dazu braucht es einen Politikmix, nämlich wir müssen weiterhin die Erwerbsbeteiligung erhöhen. Das wird eben bei den Älteren und auch bei den Frauen notwendig sein, und wir werden auch sehen, dass wir eine verstärkte qualifizierte Einwanderung in Deutschland stärken. Wir haben festgestellt, dass wir eine Gruppe nicht in der Rentenversicherung haben. Ich hatte es schon erwähnt, das sind die Selbstständigen. Die Selbstständigen sind in Deutschland nicht rentenversicherungspflichtig und haben ein höheres Risiko im Alter, Fürsorgeleistungen in Deutschland zu bekommen, also altersarm zu werden. Und das ist eine große Herausforderung im deutschen System, was die aktuelle Bundesregierung angehen will. Und daneben, was haben wir in unserer Verwaltung für Herausforderungen? Da, denke ich, müssen wir eine Menge Effizienzreserven heben und flexibler werden und uns deutlich priorisieren. Das war der Erfolg und der Schlüssel auch in der Pandemie. Denn wir erleben es, dass in den kommenden 10 Jahren gehen 25% unserer Mitarbeitenden in Rente. Und ein Viertel von gut qualifizierten Mitarbeitenden zu verlieren innerhalb von kurzer Zeit ist eine Herausforderung. Und dementsprechend auf der anderen Seite steigen, wie ich gerade gesagt habe, die Rentnerzahlen. Wir werden also dementsprechend ganz klar auf Automatisieren, Digitalisieren, aber vor allen Dingen auch vereinfachen in unseren Prozessen. Wir sind in Deutschland stark in dem digitalen Austausch mit anderen Behörden, mit unseren Arbeitgebern, sprich mit anderen Institutionen. Das läuft in Deutschland seit Jahrzehnten wirklich gut. Und wenn in Europa Datenaustausch organisiert wird, ist Deutschland auch in der Regel vorne mit dabei. Wir haben aber in Deutschland ein großes Thema und eine große Herausforderung. Frau Kweiser hat es heute Nachmittag schon angesprochen. Wir haben sehr viele Silos in der Sozialversicherung, sprich die Daten der Krankenversicherung sind die Daten der Krankenversicherung, die Daten der Rentenversicherung sind die Daten der Rentenversicherung, die Daten des Staates sind die Daten des Staates und es ist nicht kombiniert. Und das ist ein großes Thema in Deutschland, weil wir einen sehr ausgeprägten Datenschutz in Deutschland haben und wir auch sehr viele Menschen haben, die sehr viel Wert darauf legen, dass die Daten auch nur gebraucht werden für die Frage, die wir gestellt haben. Das ist eine der größten Herausforderungen in Deutschland, die Daten, die da sind, die Register, die wir haben, miteinander zu verknüpfen, um letztendlich daraus dann auch Leistungen einfacher und schneller digital zur Verfügung zu stellen. Dazu müssen wir die Menschen aber auch überzeugen, dass die Daten bei uns sicher sind, dass wir keinen Missbrauch betreiben. Und das ist eine ganz große Herausforderung in Deutschland. Wir nennen das bei uns, oder Sie kennen das auch, Once-Only-Prinzip. Der Bürger liefert einmal die Daten und dann werden die für die Leistungsgewährung benutzt. Da müssen wir noch eine ganze Menge Überzeugungskraft in Deutschland gegenüber unseren Bürgern leisten. Und das ist nicht so ganz einfach, weil wir ja kein Zentralstaat sind, sondern sehr föderal organisiert. Und da haben wir eine ganze Menge Arbeit vor uns. Vielen Dank.
Yeah, when we talk about the key trends and the reforms required, there are some very important areas on which we would like to focus. First is to expand the coverage of our schemes to more workers. As I mentioned, at present we cover only about 10% of the total working population. This we would like to expand to more workers. There is a new law on the anvil. It's called Code on Social Security, which is going to be implemented soon. And that is going to help my organization to expand coverage to new categories of workers, unorganized, as well as platform workers, gig workers, etc. So that's one immediate requirement that we are focusing on. Second is to ensure that we have convergence with other schemes in India. For example, we have another scheme which focuses on providing health insurance benefits to unorganized sector workers. We also have the estates which have their own schemes. So these schemes, the overlaps, we would like to really ensure that they are addressed. Third focus area from our point of view is to ensure that we use digitalization to the maximum extent possible. We would like to integrate our IT systems with the national public digital platform that India has built. For example, we have the world's largest digital ID platform, the Aadhaar platform, which provides real-time digital identification authentication. We also have the world's largest real-time online payment system. We have everyone in India now has a bank account, they have a mobile phone. So this trinity of real-time digital ID, real-time online payments, and the notifications through mobile platform, they can really enable a host of benefits, in fact the entire range of benefits, to be really made online for the entire insured population. And that's the goal that we have in mind. We would like to move towards that direction in which we can use IT to the maximum extent possible to ensure that we not only cover more people, we also provide them with the best of facilities through a fully online and integrated IT platform with the other digital platform that India has built over the years. I would also like to mention here that when we talk about convergence, the idea is to ensure that we do not reduce the benefits. Idea is to ensure that we use the resources being spent on various schemes more effectively, more efficiently, so that more people can be covered and we can provide benefits to maximum number of people. I would also like to mention that when we talk about future challenges. One of the key areas where we would like to focus is to also reform the organization, which is currently engaged in providing benefits to all the insured persons in terms of upskilling of our employees, training them so that they can understand the key trends emerging in future. They can acquire the skills required to deliver these services to our insured population. So these are some of the key challenges on which we would like to focus in the coming time. And I would like to mention here again that we are working very actively with other entities in the entire social security ecosystem in India to ensure that this is delivered effectively in the years to come. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ajendra, for the Indian perspective. So let's turn from Asia to Americas. So Alfredo, please.
Gracias, Marcelo. Uruguay ha ido construyendo su sistema de seguridad social desde el año 1896 hasta la fecha y en la actualidad tiene una tasa de cobertura para pasivos mayores de 65 años del 97% de la población. A partir de ahí enfrenta un desafío muy claro que es demográfico y una solución que, si me da el tiempo, se las voy a por lo menos avisar. Uruguay tiene una baja tasa de fecundidad. Desde el 2015 hacia acá la tasa de fecundidad uruguaya se ha ido desplomando. Había de ejemplo en el 96 era 2,47, en el 2019 1,5, en el 2020 1,4 y en el 2022 es un poquito menos, 1,3 y algo. O sea que en definitiva tenemos una corriente de caída de la tasa de fecundidad consistente y permanente. La contracara de eso es una buena noticia para la sociedad uruguaya y no buena para la seguridad social, que es que aumenta nuestra esperanza de vida. Uruguay tiene en el 2020, con números del 2020, la esperanza de vida de mayores de 65 años es de 17,5 para hombres y de 23,4 para mujeres. Y la estimación para el 2100 es que la esperanza de vida será de 23,4 para hombres, 6 años más, y para mujeres de 26,7, 4 años más. Como todos ustedes comprenderán, la suma de ambos extremos genera un problema muy delicado en la sociedad uruguaya, que es el envejecimiento de la sociedad. Las estimaciones que nosotros tenemos es que la población mayor de 65 años en el año 2070 será un 139% superior a la actual y un 30% del total de la población uruguaya. Y a su vez, la estimación para el 2100 es que vamos a ser menos los uruguayos que vamos a vivir en Uruguay. O sea que en definitiva nos vamos a achicar en términos demográficos. Esa es la realidad demográfica que hace frente el país. Para ello, necesariamente tiene que reformar su sistema de seguridad social. Y en los hechos se podría decir que Uruguay aprovechó el tiempo de pandemia porque en el año 2020 se creó una comisión de expertos donde estuvieron representados expertos que, valga la redundancia, representaban a todos los sectores sociales y a todos los partidos políticos, que trabajó durante 2 años, que realizó un informe de conclusiones y un informe de recomendaciones, y que eso concluyó en un proyecto de ley de reforma de la seguridad social que fue firmado en el Consejo de Ministros el jueves de la semana pasada, que hoy ingresó al Senado de la República de Uruguay y se ha confirmado una comisión de 15 senadores para empezar a dar estudio al proyecto, que se estima, porque tiene los votos para ser aprobado por la coalición de gobierno, que se aprobará en el Senado antes de fin de año y seguramente en mediados del año que viene vamos a tener un nuevo sistema de seguridad social basado en un sistema mixto de solidaridad generacional y ahorro individual, con 4 pilares: un pilar 0 asistencial, un pilar de solidaridad generacional, un pilar de ahorro obligatorio individual y un pilar de ahorro voluntario a nivel individual. En grandes líneas, este es el modelo por donde vamos a comenzar a transitar, que es una reforma del sistema mixto que ya tenemos. Se va a aumentar la edad de jubilación de manera progresiva, que hoy la tenemos en 60, la vamos a pasar a 65 a partir de los nacidos en el 74 y a razón de 1 año por vez, de manera tal de que el proceso sea medianamente razonable en el tiempo y permita sustentabilidad del sistema, que en definitiva es el desafío que se tiene cuando la cobertura es tan amplia y la relación activo-pasivo es de 2 con 1. ¿Sabes?
Perfecto. Muchas gracias, Cabrera. So now we are coming back to Asia. So Mukt, please, from Indonesia.
Thank you. So I think in addition of the climate change, globalization, the energy crisis, where the challenge and the trend critically impacting the capacity of social security system is the epidemiologic transition and aging population phenomena. The epidemiologic transition meaning that from infectious diseases to non-communicable diseases like heart disease, and then kidney stone, coronary, then cancer, diabetes mellitus, and so on and so forth, where this cause the, expenditure, a lot of things that we have to spend the money on the catastrophic of these diseases. And of course, about the old age person, where now in Indonesia, also aging population phenomenon is really a big problem. And I think there is also another thing which is re-emerging diseases. For example, like HIV, like Zika virus, and SARS, and COVID-19. For you, COVID-19 is something that is threat and we are problem with. But for me, or for us who are, working in the BPJS Kesehatan, our social security implementing agency in health, we are lucky. Why? Because the regulation is very clear. In natural disaster or non-natural disaster, including COVID, government who responsible, not BPJS Kesehatan. So therefore now we are positive in the asset. It is the first time of the history. So therefore, I think it is very important for us in our each member state and country that who is responsible when the new emerging diseases occur. Who should be responsible? This should be clear. So like us, because it is clear, then we are lucky. Then, of course, ladies and gentlemen, we have to up to date with the new development, for example, like digitalization ecosystem. We have to develop better and better. Now, before I'm in my position, we have been complaining by many members that they have to wait up to 6 hours for getting services, health services. But when we are in the position, then we develop, queuing online system. By doing this, so now from 6 hours, only approximately 2 to 3 hours. And people will know when they will be given services. And of course, not only that, but many type of ecosystem digitalization should be developed. For example, because of economic, challenge, then people, because have difficulties in paying, sometimes they have debt, then we have to have application on installment. People can, pay just what they be able to pay. Then accumulation, and then we can get that they are the member as no homework. And of course, not only that, how actually finance from domestic resources should be encouraged. For example, like not only from government working together with non-government tax, working together with non-tax, but also from corporate social responsibility, also from, the rich people who are interested in our program. We offer them. So how many people you will cover? and you will pay. And there are many companies and also rich people who are interested because they are having difficulties to, spend their money. And of course, for volatile earning, which make targeting more difficult, as we mentioned, that we have to have good public-private mixed financing and new innovation of financing, as I mentioned also for the rich people. Ladies and gentlemen, I think I will still have 1 minute, so I will optimize this time. Then again, now we're trying to increase our quality of care. Previously, because we deficit of the budget, the hospital will discriminate if our members, they are not doing well and give services are not optimum. But now we give the money in advance. If you give more services and higher quality of services without discrimination and comply to the regulation, I will give you more incentive, more money. And then many hospitals are now trying to give better services to our membership. I think because of the 9 seconds, and we have to stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we close the second round of questions with the host, so Otman.
Yes. Oui, alors, vous savez, le Maroc a pris conscience que la protection sociale était évidemment fondamentale pour évidemment la cohésion sociale. La prise de conscience, elle est là depuis un certain temps, mais la crise du Covid, évidemment, nous demande d'en faire un peu plus, d'accélérer le rythme. Et c'est ce qui a été formalisé par Sa Majesté le Roi lors de son discours de juillet 2020. Donc il a appelé les gouvernements successifs à accélérer le rythme. Alors évidemment, la volonté est là. Maintenant, la conjoncture n'est pas favorable, et c'est le moins qu'on puisse dire. À peine sorti de la crise sanitaire que nous nous retrouvons avec des tendances inflationnistes très importantes dues donc à la crise, on va dire, de la guerre en Ukraine. Et tout ça impacte de manière très forte et évidemment réduit d'une certaine manière, je dirais, les marges de manœuvre. Donc à ces contraintes, je dirais, conjoncturelles, il y a les contraintes traditionnelles que sont le vieillissement de la population et avec son corollaire qui est les affections de longue durée. Qui dit vieillissement de la population dit des gens qui sont là plus longtemps et qui fatalement vont avoir des maladies longues et coûteuses. Donc voilà, mais malgré tout, il faut avancer, il faut faire mener les réformes à leur terme. Alors pour les salariés, je dirais aussi bien du privé que du public, la problématique, je parle de l'assurance maladie obligatoire, ne pose pas trop de problèmes puisque les prélèvements peuvent être faits à la source. Par contre, la volonté d'intégrer les travailleurs non salariés, les travailleurs indépendants, là réellement le défi, et je dirais, il est de taille parce que c'est des emplois où il y a une certaine précarité par moment. Les cotisations peuvent ne pas être recouvrées de manière automatique. Et puis là, alors il y a des dispositifs qui sont en place, de pénalités, de retard, etc. Mais est-ce que c'est vraiment la bonne solution ? Oui, c'est sûr qu'il faut pousser les gens à cotiser. Maintenant, il faut également faire énormément en termes de sensibilisation, etc., etc. Donc il y a cet aspect-là. Il y a l'aspect qui concerne le registre social unifié qui va permettre de cibler les populations qui sont dans le besoin. Et là aussi, le registre en soi, c'est pas la fin en soi, puisqu'il faut mettre en place ce registre, mais il faut aussi déterminer quels sont les programmes qu'il faut cibler, ceux pour lesquels l'impact serait vraiment important sur les populations. Il y a également les problématiques d'immatriculation de ces gens-là, de la double immatriculation, etc., etc. Voilà, donc il y a énormément de sujets sur lesquels il va falloir travailler. pour réussir la généralisation disons, de l'assurance maladie obligatoire. Alors l'autre pan qu'on n'a pas beaucoup évoqué, qui a été évoqué un petit peu, c'est la réforme des régimes de retraite. Aujourd'hui au Maroc, nous avons 3 régimes obligatoires, 2 au niveau du secteur public et 1 au niveau du secteur privé. Et ces régimes sont, je dirais, pour les uns en difficulté. L'un des régimes publics verra ses réserves s'épuiser avant 2030, donc c'est une échéance qui est quand même assez rapide. Celui du secteur privé, c'est quelques années après, mais là aussi les premiers déficits, on les a. Donc le gouvernement, évidemment, a pris à bras-le-corps ce sujet. Nous, en tant qu'autorité, puisque nous centralisons l'ensemble des bases de données de ces régimes, nous travaillons sur des scénarios, des projections que nous soumettons évidemment au gouvernement. Et aujourd'hui, il y a, par rapport à la réforme des régimes de retraite, il y a des scénarios qui sont sur la table. Aujourd'hui, disons, les discussions ont été entamées avec les partenaires sociaux pour leur présenter un petit peu l'état des lieux et puis discuter avec eux les scénarios possibles. En tout cas, il y a urgence à ce niveau-là également et donc nous espérons que ce chantier, en tout cas c'est ce qui est prévu, puisse aboutir au milieu de l'année prochaine. Voilà. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. So we are approaching the finalization of the session, but we have still some minutes, and I would like to make a short question to each of you, because we began this afternoon by the approaches and presentations of two major international organizations, the ILO and the OECD, on challenges, and priorities, challenges, and solutions for Social Security. And what do you see in your view? What are the major lessons that we can take from the first presentation of this afternoon? So let's be brief, so 2 minutes for each person. So, Milka.
Thank you so much. When I was listening to the two ladies from the OECD and the ILO, I sort of put myself in the position in which they are. And I could immediately associate myself with what they could emphasize as the most important aspects. And the 3 lessons I learned from their presentation is, number 1, the emphasis on good governance. We do have good governance, or we think we do have good governance, but I think there is something that we should still look into and which is very important if you really want to run a social security institution perfectly. In addition to that, the second thing that I took away from the two ladies is that the benefits should be adequate so that they can also be sustainable. Because once the benefits are not adequate and once they are not sustainable, it becomes very difficult as a social security institution to provide the necessary services and the necessary support. And the third lesson which I learned from the two of them is that investment in social security is an investment in human capital and the economy. So at the end of the day, we don't waste money if we invest in social security and social protection, because at the end of the day, you're also investing in your own economy. And with that, I can assure you that as social security, the government is currently investing heavily in pensioners. Any pensioner in Namibia all the pensioners in Namibia qualify for a old age grant, and then that in itself, as we have seen, is assisting the economy of the country. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So, Gundula, please.
Ja, vielen Dank. In Ergänzung dessen, was habe ich mitgenommen? Zum einen von heute, wir sollten personenzentriert auf die soziale Sicherheit schauen, bestimmte Packages bilden und Menschen eine One-Stop-Strategie ermöglichen, wenn sie dann auf die Systeme treffen und vor allen Dingen ihnen quasi den Zugang zu den Leistungen einfach machen. Das Zweite, fragmentierte Systeme schaffen Ungleichheit, sprich den Blick auf die Arbeitswelt auch immer wieder legen, um zu sehen, gibt es da auch noch atypische Erwerbsformen oder wie bei uns selbstständige Formen oder Plattformarbeit, Gig-Worker oder Crowdworker, die noch nicht abgesichert sind, dass die auch in die Systeme implementiert werden. Und das Dritte, was ich mitgenommen habe, bereite dich auf die nächste Krise vor. Sie kommt schneller, als man denkt und vielleicht auch woanders, als man denkt, und dass die Organisation gut vorbereitet ist. Vielen Dank.
Okay, thank you. So, Rajendra.
Yeah, thank you. I think for me the first lesson from the panel one was that the nature of workplace is changing. And as COVID-19 already shown, the change can be very fast, and the new normal that we're all seeing in terms of the impact on our workplaces, our personal, professional lives, they are going to stay for a long time to come. So to meet this new normal, we need to recognize how the workplace is changing, and we need to reorient the social security schemes to meet the new challenges. The second takeaway for me was to understand the need to reorient or reinvent the organizations that we are leading. The entities that are involved in social security protection, they need to really recognize the changes happening around them. They need to formulate new schemes, new ideas, new ways to identify the people, the beneficiaries, the workers, and keep them in the picture so that the benefits that we all want to ensure to them, they are not lost sight of. And third lesson for me, the third key takeaway was that we all need to realize the power of IT. And in future, that's going to be a key tool in really transforming the way we all function. And digital transformation is going to be one of the key technology, key methodologies to address the challenges that we all feel are coming our way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Rajendra. So, Cabrera.
Yo he ido apuntando algunos de los conceptos que me parecen más relevantes, tanto del informe de los expertos como del informe de nuestro secretario general, y creo que más allá de las diferencias que todos tenemos, estructurales y culturales y de realidades propias, tenemos que asumir el liderazgo en la gestión de la seguridad social, basando la misma en, primero que nada, en coordinación entre los diferentes organismos, de manera tal de optimizar los recursos públicos que la sociedad pone en nuestras manos y tratar de ser lo más eficientes posible. Lo segundo es la cercanía. Creo que hay una obligación fundamental de ser cercanos a nuestros usuarios y de la mano de ellos ser transparentes. Poder, yo no sé si pasa en todos los países, pero uno a veces percibe que la seguridad social se ve como un tema complejo donde el usuario no siempre sabe cuáles son sus derechos y cuáles son sus obligaciones. Entonces creo que la transparencia, cuando se habla de beneficios, es muy importante. Lo cuarto es considerar a nuestro usuario como ciudadanos, empoderar a los usuarios para que nos exijan y a su vez sepan cuáles son los límites a sus derechos para poder tratarlos como iguales, como personas que se acercan a nosotros en momentos de crisis y que precisan de las prestaciones del Estado. El siguiente es la transformación digital. Me parece que es fundamental y que nada de las buenas intenciones que podamos tener serán posibles si no logramos una transformación digital que no es mayor informatización, sino hacer distinto las cosas a partir de las nuevas tecnologías para permitirnos soluciones más modernas, más eficientes a los viejos problemas que nos enfrentamos. Y el último me parece que es la educación. Sin duda, la educación en seguridad social es un tema que me parece relevante y que no siempre lo tenemos en nuestra agenda de temas porque generalmente lo urgente nos saca el punto de vista de lo más importante.
Perfecto, gracias. Mukti.
Yeah, thank you. I think it is very important to know and to realize and that actually social security is the right of every citizen. Unfortunately, not all the government, high-ranking government officials join and come to this very important meeting, and they have their own perception. So that is, I think, our gap and our homework. How to, ask them together, sit together with us to make very good decision to expand the coverage and to realize that the social security is the basic right. That is the one. Then second, I think it is important to, make sustainability of the social security. There are many challenges, of course. So therefore, the key is the innovation. Innovation, leadership, good governance. This should be, should be realized, and we go to that direction. And investment on social security is actually increasing the capacity of human capital. It is really very important. And then I think it is also important to, from both speakers, that we have to keep up with the ecosystem of the digitalization and new industrial revolution in 4.0. So it is very important. With the, big data, we have to be able to always have new innovation. And then the last one, I think it is very important that always person-centered approach. How actually that not only access, but quality and satisfaction and the need, demand of the members should be fulfilled. So the person-centered approach is very important. I think that is all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, Otman, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, alors, moi, ce que j'ai retenu, c'est que, à vouloir évidemment élargir la protection sociale, ce qui est évidemment une excellente chose, on exacerbe la demande. Et lorsqu'on exacerbe la demande, il faut prévoir une offre de qualité. Alors l'offre de qualité, elle passe par des équipements, par des infrastructures, mais également par un personnel bien formé et promu. Il faut promouvoir ces gens-là. Nous, on a une véritable difficulté, c'est qu'une partie de nos ressources émigrent en Europe, et ce qui est évidemment très fâcheux pour nous, parce qu'on a besoin de ces ressources-là. Et donc voilà, demande exacerbée, il faut qu'il y ait une offre au niveau. Évidemment, le deuxième point, c'est le financement. Et le financement, c'est le nerf de la guerre, je dirais. Et alors, même si on a peu de moyens, il faut pouvoir mieux les utiliser. Parfois, il y a une dispersion de moyens. Si on prend le cas du Maroc, il y a pas mal de programmes sociaux, 1 million de cartables, l'heure à Ahmed, Teissir, etc., etc. L'idée, c'est de réorienter ces ressources et de mieux les utiliser pour pouvoir effectivement réussir ce chantier de la généralisation de la protection sociale. Dernier point, évidemment, la digitalisation, ce n'est pas la panacée, mais ça peut permettre effectivement de fluidifier les rapports, d'être plus efficient et, disons, par là même, traiter la problématique de la protection des données que Madame a évoquée. Chez nous aussi, c'est un sujet. Aujourd'hui encore, il y a des feuilles, des bulletins de maladie qui sont remplis et qui passent de main en main. Voilà, et donc tout ça ne préserve pas évidemment les données des uns et des autres. Voilà.
Parfait, merci beaucoup. So, we are closing the session today. So just to explain the perspective of the entire World Security Forum. So today we had, in this afternoon, this global, general, macro perspectives of challenges, solutions, trends in social security via the top experts and top managers of social security, all over the world. And it will continue over the next days with top managers, with top experts as well. But the perspective of the sessions over the following days will go from this very macro, general perspective to the more micro, specific points. And we have many, many different sessions touching many different specific points of Social Security. So take the benefit for sharing your experience, for teaching what you're doing, for learning from others, and for networking. And talking about networking, we have now a welcome reception, so it's a unique time for you to see people from the other part of the world here, because almost the entire world is here. So take the benefit and use the app for seeing, and many people are contacting me via the app. I'm happy with this, and use the app to see the program, to see where are the sessions that you want to go, and what the times the session that you want to go. So before giving the word to you, I'd like to thank you all very, very much. So Milka, Gundula, Otman, Rajandra, Cabrera, Mukti, thank you very, very much, and I will be seeing you around. So thank you very, very much.
Bravo à tous et bravo à Marcelo Abiram Caetano pour avoir piloté cette cérémonie, ce panel. Bien évidemment, dans quelques moments, je vous invite à vous détendre. Vous allez faire comme moi, hein, je vais enlever ma cravate. Je pense que c'est le bon timing. Il fait encore jour, il y a encore du soleil. Donc je vais enlever ma cravate pour pouvoir profiter de la réception qui a lieu au bord de la piscine. Hein. Donc je n'irai pas jusqu'au maillot, mais vous pouvez en profiter.
Dommage.
N'est pas tombé dans la piscine.
Voilà. Hein.
N'est pas tombé dans la piscine.
Voilà. Alors, vous pouvez y aller. N'oubliez pas de prendre avec vous votre badge. Comme c'est sécurisé, gardez quand même le badge, c'est extrêmement important. Alors, juste indication, si quelqu'un a perdu un téléphone, il est là-haut en régie, c'est un iPhone blanc.